Okay, so now you should be well and truly ready to build your first mobile extension. And for this session, you'll need your IDE of preference installed. I'm going to be using VS Code. You'll need the Scheduler CLI installed and set up, a Scheduler environment you're able to test and experiment within. If you haven't done so, you should quickly take a moment to connect your CLI with the Scheduler environment you're going to build and deploy the mobile extension in. And it's worth saying you should also have a user set up so you can log into the Scheduler Plus mobile app and view the extensions you build. If you've not had a chance to do any of those yet, now's a good time to pause the video and go and do that. For this session, we are going to keep things really simple, just so that you can get a sense of the file structure of a mobile extension and how we go about creating some of those configuration files. It also gives you an opportunity to use the Scheduler CLI mobile extension commands. So we're going to create a simple mobile extension that simply displays Hello World. It's worth noting that the example we're going through, as well as many others, are available on our public Scheduler Plus examples repo on GitHub. So if you prefer, you can go ahead and clone it, but it's not required as we're going to be creating each of those configuration files directly in the IDE as we go along, so that we have an opportunity to talk about each part of the configuration as we're putting it together. So let's open our IDE and create a folder called HelloWorld. We will store the configuration files within this folder, so when you get to create your next mobile extension, you can simply create a new folder within the same directory. The next file we're going to create is our state file, and this is just going to live at the root level. So let's go ahead and create a new file called helloworld.mobileextension.json. Once you've done that, head over to the first link in the description below and copy the configuration into your state file. So now it should look like this. Within the Hello World folder, we're going to create a MEX definition folder. This folder is going to contain each of our configuration files except one, our upload_config.json file. So let's go ahead and create a new file called upload_config.json. And then head over to the second link in the description below where you can copy the JSON and paste it into your file. As you can see, the upload_config.json file contains some basic information about your mobile extension. Its name, which is what your end users will see in the mobile app, the def ID or the definition ID. This is simply the developer name for this extension. And finally, the engine version, which is the version of the mobile extensions framework you're using. So now we have the basic details taken care of. Let's put together the rest of the mobile extension. Next, inside of the MEX_definition folder, we're going to create our next piece of configuration, the metadata.json file. This is another simple JSON file which contains additional metadata about your extension. And so now if you head over to the third link in the description below, you can copy and paste that configuration into your new metadata.json file. In here, you include a summary of the extension, the order the extension should be displayed in, which is particularly helpful when you have multiple mobile extensions within a single scheduler environment. And the last key piece of configuration to point out in this file is the context object. This will determine if your mobile extension will be displayed when a job is opened, or if it should be accessible by the user at all times outside the context of a single job. You can see in this example, it's set to resources. So this means the mobile extension will show in the main menu outside the context of a single job. If you wanted this to display within the context of a job, then you'd simply just change this value to jobs. The next two files we're going to create are required for all mobile extensions. However, we're going to leave them blank as we don't need to work with data for this mobile extension. But as these are mandatory files, let's go ahead and create an instance fetch.json file and a static fetch.json file within the MEX_definition folder. Next, let's configure our second last JSON file, the UI_def.json. In many ways, the UI_def file I feel is the workhorse of all mobile extensions. This is where we define what the user sees when they open the extension on their mobile device. You can get the definition for this file in the fourth link in the description below. Now, let me take a moment to explain this JSON file, because as soon as you've got your head around this, you will have the biggest part of the mobile extensions framework understood and be able to take that knowledge and apply it and extrapolate it to make many more mobile extensions. The UI.def.json file contains each page of your mobile extension. So, for example, if you wanted to display a list of invoices, you would have a list page. And when you selected one of the invoices in the list, it might take you to a page that has additional invoice details about that specific invoice. That's called a flat page. So in this example, we'd have two pages within our mobile extension: a list page to list all the invoices, and a flat page to view the details of the invoice. Each of those would then be represented within the UI.def.json file. Now, for our Hello World example, there is only going to be a single page in our extension. You can see we've named this very creatively Hello World. But if it was our list of invoices, we might have called this page Invoice List. What you call the page, though, is completely up to you. You will then see we have to define the type of page. In this case, we are just going to output the word Hello World, so we're just going to use a flat page. Typically, you're going to use flat pages to represent a record, but a flat page can also be used to display static data. Now, if the UI.def.json file is the working horse of a mobile extension, the items array is the beating heart of the horse. This is where we define which UI components we want to display to the user. In the description below, you'll find a link to all the UI components that can be put on a page. And in this example, we're going to use the text view component. And as you've probably guessed, this allows us to present text to a user. Our text view component allows us to display a title defined by the title property, and a subtitle defined by the text property. You will see the title property is set to what looks like a string of title, and the text property is also set to a string of description, whereas in fact they act more like variables or placeholders. And when we define our language file later in this video, we can define what we want to inject into the UI presented to the mobile user. So we've now configured our text view component within the items array. We're only using one component, so there are no other items to add. You'll see we can give the page a title, which is what a user will see at the very top of the page. And finally, we need to define which page the mobile extension should load first when it's open. In our Hello World example, we only have a single page, so it's going to be that one. Believe it or not, you've now built about 90% of a custom mobile experience. Right, let's wrap this mobile extension up and send it into our environment. Within the mex_definition folder, I'd like you to create a new folder called static resources. So that's static_resources. And within that folder, I'd like you to create another folder called locales. And within this folder, create a file called en.json. Now, just to take a quick moment to explain what we've done here. If we had any static files or images that we'd want to use, we'd put them in the first folder we created, static_resources. But one of the other types of static file is our language file. So that's why we have a locales folder within our static_resources folder. And because we are going to define our language in English, we have an en.json file. If we were also going to support Spanish in our mobile extension, we'd have an es.json file too. But what exactly do we need to put in our en.json file? If you remember, in our UI_def.json file, we configured a component, the text view component. And remember, we set the title property to title and the description property to description. Well, this is where we define what values should be injected into the UI based on the user's device language. So if you go ahead and open the fifth link in the description below, you will see the configuration we need to copy into our en.json file. We simply reference the variable we used in the UI component. In this instance, we called it title, but you can call the variable anything you like. And for the title, we want to display Hello World to our English-based users. And in the description, we want to display a simple example mobile extension. And that's your first mobile extension built. Now we can get it deployed into your environment. We're going to deploy this with the Schedulo CLI. So let's open a terminal window within the IDE and look at the commands available for mobile extensions. So let's run the following command: get artifacts mobile-extension -a In my example, my instance is called demo1, but you will have your own alias for your environment, then dash dash help. You will see we can use the Schedulo CLI to get, create, update, and delete mobile extensions. So given we want to create a new mobile extension, let's see what options we get when we go to create by running sched artifacts mobile dash extension create your alias dash dash help. So to create a new mobile extension, the only thing we need to give the CLI is our mobile extension state file denoted by the F flag, F for file name. So we only need to slightly modify our command to include the F flag, which points to our state file. So now our command should look something like this. And by removing the help flag, the CLI will now attempt to execute this command the moment we press enter. Now, as soon as that deploys, you should see your HelloWorld mobile extension appear under the More menu within the Schedulo Plus mobile app, just like this. And that's it, you've done it. Your first mobile extension, built and deployed with the Schedulo CLI. If you have any questions or got stuck anywhere, drop a comment below and we'll come back to you. Next, we're going to take everything we've learned and create a multi-page mobile extension that works with data. So when you're ready, join me in the next session. I'll see you there.